So hello everybody. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Diego. I work for the Historic Districts Council, and this is another meeting of the Bronx Borough Landmarks Committee. For those who don't know, the Bronx Borough Landmarks Committee is a meeting that aims to promote the historic treasures of the Bronx. And those treasures are architectural treasures as well as cultural treasures. So for today, we're focusing on the cultural treasures of the Bronx, specifically on the murals made by Tats Cru. Tats, Tats Cru is an iconic graffiti group from the Bronx. They've been in the Bronx for since the 1960s, 70s, and their work can be seen in all neighborhoods of the borough. And today with us is joining Nicer. Nicer is one of the founding members of Tats Cru, and he's going to be talking about. That's a very funny
That's why, yeah,
picture.
I love that.
Yeah. So he's going to be talking about the murals that he's done. His group has done in the Bronx, the stories behind them, and what they mean and what they represent for the culture of the Bronx. So Neisser was born in 1967 in the South Bronx. He's a native Bronxite, and I was reading about his bio, and it's so interesting that you started as an artist from a very, very young age, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
so can you tell us about how you got started in the art and ultimately in graffiti art?
Um, wow. First of all, hi everyone. Um, Secondly, I think it was something that I just gravitated to just because I love to draw, and I always found like in history class in school when they gave us these big textbooks, everybody else was reading text, and I was looking at these famous paintings of like someone on a horse or someone like it was like it was all this like like wow, look at this imagery. Like it was like I was dyslexic like that. I really kind of like gravitated to the imagery. But no, I grew up in an era where we had TV guides, and at the back of every TV guide we had there was like a thing where you could draw like a pirate or a turtle, which was called Tippy or whatever it was. And it was so it's like I always found myself drawing, sketching, tracing into comic books, but I it was at an early age because I had two uncles um, that were into sports, but like super into sports. Like they had their room flooded with like trophies, and they played for every little league, every so for me, everybody thought I was gonna follow the same path, but I
Yeah.
wasn't into that. So yeah, no, I drew my whole life. I it was
Yeah.
something that I was born with.
And back then, the Bronx was very different from how it is
Yeah,
now.
yeah. I mean, but you gotta remember, we didn't have. So in the '70s, it was uh how can I explain it? It was like the beginning of the Koch era. Um, because we went from Lindsay to Koch. What ended up happening was especially the Bronx. We had no art programs. There was no programs for kids to go to. There was nowhere for if you were full of energy and you was like a young teenager, you was like 9, 10, 11, 12. You had nowhere to go. So what ended up happening was that kind of became the birth of hip hop because now you're on your block, you have nothing else to do. So now that you're on your block, you see somebody breakdancing, you're like, what is that? I bet you I could do it better. So, like in sports, it's very competitive. Like whoever's like hits a lot of home runs, you always want to hit more home runs than him. So
Yeah.
breakdancing, rapping, DJing. So everybody kind of like created their own thing just because we didn't have anything. So for me, being that I always was into art, I kind of gravitated to graffiti because it was my thing. And
Yeah.
it was funny. I remember coming home from school. I was like in elementary school, going into junior high school, and I saw a train painted. And remember, I told you I was always into comic books. And this train pulled up, and I looked at the lettering, and it had a character at the end. And I said, "Wow, that's the world's biggest comic book cover." Because if you look at comic book cover, it's made up of two things. It's usually the name of the superhero, which is big block letters or letters that are like big and bold. And there's usually an image of the superhero. So the superhero was like the character on the side smoking a joint or something, whatever it was. So it was
Yeah.
like, so for me, I saw that image and it was like, wow, I want to do that. So I remember getting out of the train and going home and starting asking guys on the block. I was like, yo, who does that? How do you do that? And they were like, you know, Fulano that lives in a corner building. It's always inside the building, hanging out, smoking. Talk to him because he does that. And then I started realizing it was so underground. It was kind of like a títere thing. It was like
Yeah.
it was something that it was it, it was criminal, but it wasn't criminal because like in the 70s, you didn't even see police. And when you saw them, they didn't come out the police car. They would stop in front of you. You was little kids, and you was pushing a cart around and like playing with your friends, and they would stop there. They were like, "Come here." They wouldn't even get out the car. They'd call you to the car. Nowadays, they get out, they run after you, they trample you. But the thing was, we got away with a lot just because New York City was going through coming out of bankruptcy, and
Yeah.
there wasn't that many police, and we ended up creating our own energy out of what we had. We didn't have much.
Yeah. And do you feel that the fact that back then there were a lot of abandoned buildings, do you think that made it easier for you to paint murals? Did you feel that you were in a playground where you could just explore your art and feel free to paint whatever you wanted?
No, I mean it was a little of that, but to be totally honest, I grew up in Longwood. So I grew up in Longwood between Southern Boulevard and Prospect. So if you know that area, it was. I went to PS 39, so that was the only school, the only building that was like up, while everything around it was abandoned. Um, Famous movies was filmed there, and we didn't realize we were being exploited because, again, I didn't know I was poor. Like for me, like I grew, my building was a community. Like your mother ran out of rice. She was like, "Vete a Titi Celia's." You would go upstairs like 3 flights. You would go with a cup. They give you rice. You run down. So it was like everybody had doors open. That's where we grew up. So like everybody took care of each other's kids. But so the abandoned lots was our playground. We would find things in their pipes, and we would make little slingshots out of like rubber bands and stuff. But no, in my neighborhood they filmed Wolfen with Gregory Hines and I think it was Gregory Peck. No, it wasn't Gregory Peck. Wolfen, Beat Street, um, Fort Apache, where they dumped the woman's body wrapped in the rug in that pile. That was right across the street from my titi's house. Like I could look
Yeah.
out the window. So it was like I grew up in a neighborhood that was being used like in a way that for us it was normal. Like that was our trees and our grass. It was like I didn't I didn't understand that I didn't have until I left. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh shit, I really didn't have. But I appreciated everything.
Yeah. Something that I think is very unique about Tats Cru is that you've portrayed some of the most iconic artists, hip hop artists from the
Oh yeah.
Bronx. For example, DJ Herc, who is credited
Yeah.
for being
Cool
the
hurt.
creator of hip hop. So, can you
Of
talk
hip hop,
about
yeah.
the relationship
Yeah,
between
so
graffiti art and hip hop? How do these two art forms relate?
all right, so kind of like what ended up happening for us, especially in the 80s, uh one of the big things was flyers, lead jackets. so imagery, graffiti imagery was always part of that underground because you wanted to be flashy. You always wanted your flyers to be more flashier than someone else's. You wanted your dressing to look more flashy. So it was always about outshining. Remember, hip hop is very competitive. That's what it's about. So early on, we ended up. So my partner Bio is from Bronx River, and Bronx River, uh, uh, Bambaataa was from Bronx River, which is Zulu Nation. So he came out with a record called Planet Rock, and it was a smash. So he ended up hiring us to paint something in the community center, inside the community center, while he would throw these parties, these jams. So for us, we looked at it like, all right, we'll do it, but the leftover paint, we're gonna take it. And in our minds, it was like, we're gonna take it so we don't have to steal spray paint. We can go paint the trains with the leftover paint. So that's how it kind of like we started getting introduced to like doing stuff for people that was in that industry. And then um, again, we've done stuff for like Grandmaster Flash. This is old stuff. And then that's how we kind of broke it. But we always did it not to make money. We kind of did it for the paint
Yeah.
because back then it was like we didn't have money. So we would go to hardware stores and steal paint to paint trains. But once we started getting a little older, and we were like, oh wow, we're making money and they're giving us paint. I'm gonna go paint tonight. So we've done stuff for like so there was a television show. I think they only had one episode. It's called Graffiti Rock by Gary Holtman. No, what was his name? Holtman was his last name. But so he produced it. He also emceed it. He had Run DMC on. So it was like we were part of things that we didn't realize were going to be instrumental in future things. But yeah, I mean, for us, it was just like we were kids just running around in the city trying to like, because graffiti overall on the whole was, we were always trying to do, we had a battle against guys from Brooklyn, from Queens, from that. So if we painted a train here in the Bronx trains would travel from here to Manhattan and end up in Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah.
So all along those lines, other graffiti writers from those, like from those boroughs would look at it. So it's kind of like sending a smoke signal, like an urban smoke signal, like going, look, I'm here. Look what I could do. Like F
Yeah.
you. Like this is what I do. Like you heard of me? Like it was like that. So it
And
was very competitive.
would they somehow reply? Would they make
Yeah,
some kind
so
of response?
so they would paint, and then see the new stuff they would do. You'd be like, "Ooh, I gotta do something better than that." And it was like that. It was like a game to us. We were kids.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So,
And also, I think it's so interesting that some of the artists that you've portrayed in your murals, you've known them, you've been friends with them.
yeah,
For
yeah,
example,
yeah.
Big Pun or Fat Joe,
Yes,
right?
yes, 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 yes.
And this is a very interesting mural. And one time you told me a very, very funny story of this mural, and how, well, it was not funny for you, but it was very interesting to hear what happened after you guys did
Oh, I got
this
arrested.
mural.
Yes, yes. All right. So what happened was, so once, so after we stopped painting trains, we were kids, and then once we got older, we were in our 20s. Now life hit us in our rear ends, and we had to get jobs and become like working adults. So um, we would still get together on the weekends, me and my two partners, and paint walls in our neighborhood. It was like our version of like guys getting together to go bowling or go fishing. It was like, but if you're from the hood, nobody goes bowling, nobody goes fishing. So for us, it was like, yo, I got a wall in the, because there used to be a supermarket down the block on Fox Street in Intervale. It was called Fedco. It was a old supermarket, and but I knew the owner, and he told me, "Yeah, pay whatever you want, just do me a sign right here." So that was our agreement with him.
Yeah.
So we would get together every so often to paint that wall. Long story short, what ended up happening was now that we were painting in the street, people would come up to us and be like, "Oh, you the guys that do that?" Like, we would be like, "No, no, no, I don't do this," because we didn't understand. Like, remember, we always painted in subway tunnels and train yards, like away from people that would approach us. Now we're being approached by people. They're like, "Hey, look, I didn't know you guys do that. Like, I saw you all the time over here." And we're like, "No, I don't do this." So it was weird.
Yeah.
It was like, so then once we started doing a little things here and there, we started to get hired to do work for little mom and pop grocery stores, and then then we started to get hired and we started to get paid for this. So it was
Yeah.
like it was a side job, but all in all, we still had contacts with a lot of the hip hop friends that we had from before. So while we were painting graffiti, uh, legally,
Your
um,
camera was turned off.
oh my god, oh, you know what? I see my battery's low. Give me 1 second. Let me plug it in. I apologize.
Don't
Um,
worry.
so what ended up happening was um, Joe, Fat Joe, was a graffiti writer. Guys, I apologize about this. Fat Joe was a graffiti writer that we knew from the neighborhood, and he would tag along. I apologize. Let me just get this in there. There you go. Can you guys see me?
No, we can't see you.
No.
Your camera was turned off.
Ah, man, so sorry about that.
Yeah, there you
How about
go.
now?
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
All right. So what ended up happening was, so Joe was somebody in the neighborhood because he was from Forest Projects. He would come down wherever we was painting and hang out with us. So he would tell us things like, "Yeah, I'm going to the studio," and we would look at him. We like, "Look at this Goldie Flum. Like, he ain't gonna rap. Like, get out of here. Like, you go to the studio." But he ended up becoming a rapper. We were like our jaws dropped. We started going to jams and places, and he was shocked that we knew people that he didn't know in the industry just because we were doing it for the industry people prior to him getting on. So it was like, so if you look at the word TATS, when we started painting trains in the 70s and the 80s, we were actually TAT, which stood for Teenagers Are Tough, Top Artistic Talent. And then when we
Mm.
met Joe, we would write his crew, which was TS, at the end of every TAT. So we would sign every mural TAT, TS, and had too many T's. So we ended
Yeah,
up losing one T and we just went TATS. So it's like
yeah,
merging them. And then people were like, "You guys are Tats." And we were like, "No, we're TATTS." And they didn't get it. And it was kind of, so we were like, we gave up and we said, "Yeah, we Tats." Like that was it. And then,
yeah.
yeah, no, but since,
And
listen, we've done work for people like, this art form crosses so many genres. Um, we've done work for Jennifer Lopez, Mark Anthony. We've done work for Nas, for oh my God, it's
yeah,
we probably Mariah Carey. We've done videos for people that they probably didn't realize that we've done for them. But the craziness about that is we were invited about 4 or 5 years ago to do something for Metallica in Staten Island. So they rented this big area and they did a 3 day event. I'm sorry about that. My phone's a mess. Can you see me?
yeah.
All right,
Um,
yeah, yeah. So we've done
listen,
stuff for like Metallica and all type of different groups and stuff like that. But Pun
yeah,
was a friend of ours.
and this mural in particular, it's been redone several times, right?
You're
You've
right,
done you. So the first time you did this mural was the day that Big Pun died, right?
right,
And so he was a very good friend of yours, and
right.
you were doing this
So
mural.
right.
And
So I was getting to that. Right. So what ended up happening was, being that we did a lot of stuff for record labels, we were doing campaign ads in different cities, like major markets, doing, instead of like billboards or signs, we were painting them on walls. So we would hire other graffiti artists in other cities to work for us to paint these billboards for albums that were coming out. We were in the middle of like promoting Pun's album. here in New York, Philadelphia, and Jersey, while we had guys in LA and Philadelphia and Florida and Chicago. So everything was going on beautifully. Everything was like within 2 weeks, we were gonna have the entire, like globe covered with as many murals as we can get.
Yeah.
We get a phone call, like Angie Martinez is assistant at the time called and was like, "Yo, I don't know if you guys heard, but Angie's gonna go on live. You guys want to say anything?" We were like, "Nah." So Bio, which is my partner, got the phone call in the office. So he was like, "Let me double check." So he's calling Joe. He's calling Joe. He's calling Joe. He's getting voicemails, and then finally Joe's wife calls back. Lorena, she goes, "Yeah, yo, it really happened. One just passed. Joe's inside. He don't want." So she's talking to us on Joe's phone. So we were supposed to use that wall to do a poster campaign for his second album, was called Yeah Baby. So it was gonna say Yeah Baby in big lettering from the corner all the way to the gate. And then and when he passed, we didn't know what to do. We hung up from her. We sat in the office quiet for a while. And my other partner, BG, goes, "Yo, let's go paint for Pun." And we're like, "Yo, but the album, we don't know what's." He was like, "Now let's, the wall we was gonna paint right now, let's do it for him." So we was like, "All right." So we go out there, we start to paint, but we didn't tell really a lot of people. We told maybe like 3 people. Then it turned into like 15 people. Then it turned to like 60 people. And then all of a sudden, those 60 people started telling other people. And while we were doing the memorial wall, it was like a gift from us to him because he was our friend. And that wall was
Yeah.
actually used for his when they were shopping his deal. That was the wall that he used. We had something that we painted on our own, and he took his promo photos in front of the wall. So he really liked that wall. So we went over it to do him a memorial. And the crazy part of that story is, while we're there painting, it turned into, oh my God, sorry about that. You know what it is? I have my charger. The wires underneath the phone. Um,
Yeah.
so so many people. There must have been about like 300 people out there that day while we were painting. So we started the first day. Got super cold. Jimmy's from Bronx Cafe came out, gave us trays of food. Um, so many people turned out, like Ruben Diaz. This was way before he was in office. He showed up. His father was in office at the time. He showed up, brought us like drinks and waters and stuff like that. And it was cold. It was like a freezing day. And I always said Pun was he was a big joker. So the biggest joke he played on us was dying on one of the coldest days in New York City history. So because we were out there freezing, like fuck you, like it was funny. So what ended up happening is we had to go back the second day. So we get there the second day to finish it. While we're there, it's more and more people. So it's like it's so many people we couldn't even get through with our paint, like our crates of paint. We finished painting. Now we're done. Everybody's celebrating. They're taking photographs, and I say goodbye to the fellas. My car was parked about 2 blocks away. I go over to my car. I get in my car. I remember I had laundry in the back seat. I was like, I gotta drop off the laundry. So I go up Rogers Place. I make a left on Longwood. I'm going towards Southern Boulevard, and I get pulled over. So when a cop tells you, "Get out the car, sir," I'm like, "What?" They usually tell you, "Can I see your license and registration?" So he goes, "Get out the car." I'm like, "What?" So I get out the car. So he goes in my wallet. They go through all my stuff. And I'm like, "What? You arrested?" Like, I know I'm being arrested. It's not the first rodeo. So I'm like, "What are you doing?" Like, he's like, "Yeah, what were you doing that you wasn't supposed to be doing?" I'm like, "Nothing. I was painting a wall." I was like, "Correct." I'm like, now meanwhile, I know the property owner. That's how we got the wall. So remember, I paint walls all over the United States because I how we ended up becoming a company was we took what ad agencies were doing and media companies were doing, and they were renting locations from property owners, and they would pay them monthly rentals to use the spaces to do billboards. What better way of bringing back a city with hand painted stuff? So if I hand paint something, it's going to be an actual performance, because when people stop and go, "Oh wow, they painting that live." It's not a billboard company
Yeah.
going like this, coming with a paper and gluing it on, and like they leave in 2 seconds. But when you see a van pull up, ladders come out, guys are painting it, then it becomes like an all day performance piece. It's like a juggling act in front of you.
Yeah.
So that was our selling act to these ad agencies. So I knew this landlord that we were doing that wall in front of, like that we were painting on. So, and when the guy said, "Well, that's why you're being arrested," and I stood quiet. I was like, I'm at that point, I was old enough to be like, "Stay quiet." So I stood quiet, and I get to the precinct, and they pull me out of a car, and my other two partners are coming out of a van, and one of them looks at me and goes, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, I look at him with a smirk, like, the same fucking reason you do it. Like, we just got arrested for painting that wall. And so long story short, we in 161st, we in the tombs. Everyone's calling, fighting with the court system to let us out. Um, Thanks to everyone from Jimmy to Ruben to who was the Bronx Borough president? Calderon, Adolfo Calderon. Everyone called, and they kind of like speeded us to get out of there, and we got out of there. But it was funny because once we hit the street, they were like, "Don't talk to nobody." We're like, "Okay." So we go back to the office. Now we haven't taken a shower like a day and a half. We go back to the office. So we're like, I want to gather my stuff because my car was in. Somebody took my car to the office. So I went over to get my keys in my car and my laundry. I still didn't do laundry. So I get over there and I'm like, "Yo, what's going on?" And there was the news media was in front of our office. They wanted us to blast the police department. At the time, we were like, the first thing our lawyer said, which thank God for Stacy Richmond and her father, she was like, "Don't say nothing to nobody. Stay quiet." I get that, grab my keys, and all the people with cameras. I'm like, I got my keys. So there's photos of me with my keys like this, trying to hide. It's funny. But
Yeah. And
no, that was it. That was it.
this other mural of Fat Joe.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
when
that
did you
that
guys start doing murals for commercial
right.
purposes?
So in 1994, what ended up happening, like, so remember, we used to get together when we stopped painting trains in the 80s, at the end of the 80s. And then during the 90s, there was about like 92, 93, 94. We were just hanging out, just painting to get away from the girlfriends at the times before the wives era. Like they were, we would just get away. Like, I'm gonna go paint. So I'm sorry about that. So what ended up? Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay. So what ended up happening was we um we started realizing and paying attention to like GQ magazine, Esquire magazine, like certain magazines would have ads that would have like graffiti. They would say like urban graffiti. And when you looked at it, like the artwork was definitely generated in like some art department where the guy actually wasn't a graffiti artist. It was like some guy from the Midwest that had no idea about this urban, like imagery that we kind of invented and like um, um you know, like made our signature. So
Yeah.
we started getting upset about it at the beginning, and then we were like, you know what? You can't get mad at them. It's our fault because they can't call. You can't pick up the phone and go, "Yeah, I need graffiti." So we were like, why don't we create something where we can be like that voice of the imagery that they're looking for or they're trying to emulate. So that was like the beginning of the company of Tats Cru. ink. And then so it started from that kind of idea, but it took a long, actually somebody who smacked us into like reality was this guy. I still love him today. I run into him every now and then. His name is Paul Chapman. He was the vice president at the time of ABC Carpet and Homes. They used to have a store down on 18th Street. I think it was 18th, 19th, and West Broadway, I think it was. So he was the vice president. So when they opened up the Bronx location, which was supposed to be like a warehouse, like an outlet, he hired us. I don't know how the hell he found us, because he was like this old hood. He was like an old. He was like if you looked at him, he kind of reminds you of like Casino, the Jewish version. Like he was gangster. Like we were like, so when we met him, like yeah, he had a fat mustache. He was like, and he looked like Groucho Marx.
Yeah,
But at the minute we met him, like we walked into his big place, and he was walking around with a cigar, and he looked at us, and we looked at dirty. We always had spray paint on us and paint on us. He was like, "You must be the graffiti guy," and we were like, "Yeah." He was like, "Follow me," and from that
yeah,
moment on, he became one of our best friends. To this day, like he still sends like us messages and stuff. But but he was the one that kind of like told us, you need to incorporate. Why are you getting a check under your name, a check under your name, a check under your name? And he kind of opened the doors, or he kind of opened our eyes to things that we didn't see at the time. But there is a potential to take something that wasn't looked at as viable and make it viable.
yeah,
Because this is a man that made a living. He made a living off of selling people chairs with three legs. That's what ABC Carpet and Homes was about. It was like they'll sell you a $400-500 pillow like this big. So it was like stuff
yeah,
that they found. So it was like
yeah.
but
It's interesting, and
because of that, we started to do ad campaigns, and we started introducing ourselves to ad agencies. And being that we had a network of graffiti artists, and at the same time, the internet was new. So we found other graffiti artists in other cities that admired what we were doing here in New York. So we would befriend them and hire them to do stuff in their cities.
yeah,
So that
and
was kind of like the beginning of the business.
some of the murals that you've done have become very popular among tourists.
Uh-huh.
And this particular mural, I Love the Bronx, which is located on Simpson Street and Westchester Avenue,
Right.
is particularly very, very popular among tourists. I've read some articles talking about all the buses that go directly to this mural because tourists want to see this mural. It's become very, very
Something, yeah.
famous. So, how do you feel about that? Do you feel that your art is making the Bronx more popular among tourists, and is that something that you want?
If you look at what we did there, everything inside of each of those letters has something that pertains to the Bronx. I think on that one, the R, there's the the JFK Bridge, which is actually the Triborough Bridge. Then on top is the turn on Simpson Street, that's where it's located. And then on the bottom of the R, that's Jonah Bronx, which is the Bronx is named after. So what we wanted to do is, and then to the right, there's like a guy, a DJ, and then so what we wanted to do with this mural is kind of like not do the regular Yankee Stadium, Bronx Zoo, even though they're in there, but not just do the regular what people think the Bronx is about. So we try to highlight things. There's I think a guy shaving piraguas. There's a conga player. There's kids playing stickball. There's an iconic sculpture by oh my god, I'm sorry about this. Ahern with the two little girls up on the wall, they jumping rope. So it's like we try to do iconic things that we thought were iconic because we're from the Bronx, not the
Yeah,
traditional stuff. So, but in that bottom of the R, if you look, that's the only photo that we found of Jonah Bronx signing the treaty from the Indians to get the land of the Bronx. That's how the Bronx was formed. Whether it was right or wrong, it was just so it was like a historical thing, but we wanted to pay homage. So the thing is, when we do things like this, we're not thinking about who's gonna come, who's gonna. We do it for ourselves, and we do it because you know what? We grew up in these neighborhoods. If these
Yeah.
walls don't have color, that I'm gonna try to make it as fast as possible because I know there's not a lot of time left. But in all truthfulness, people that grow up in these neighborhoods, they're working class families. They're single mothers. There's fathers that are single with kids. There's so many like the variants are so big that, but there's no time for these kids to be taken to museums or galleries and shown what a Monet is, what or a Picasso is, or pointillism or cubism, or it's what ends up happening is the stuff that we're painting outside in these kids' faces that becomes their museums. That's the color in their
Mm.
lives.
Yeah.
Besides that, besides that, there's kind of like no place for them to go to see colors and art or something creative in their face.
Mm.
They're stuck in there every day. They go to school, they go home, they hang out on the block. That's why some of them go sideways because there's nothing for them. There's no programming for them. So for us, we've become these walls on the block become the Monets, the Picassos, the you know like they're the images and the colors in their lives that they lacked prior to us going to the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Diego, I just want to mention that in terms of Tats Cru's work, when I started my first bread and breakfast before Airbnb, Mi Casa Tu Casa, uh,
Yes.
I wanted to get a feel that this was a Latino thing, that people walked into this house and it was a Latino guest house. So I had an interior designer do the inside of the house, but I had this wall in the back and I wanted to do a yard, but I wanted people to go back there and that's where they're going to hang out. And I thought that there's nobody better than Tats Cru. I
You're
called
funny.
Nicer and I said to Nicer, I have this wall back here.
So I got you. I
And I
got you.
said, bro, I got to do something that when people walk in here, I want them to feel what it is to be a Latino, to
To be in
feel
the
a little bit of
UK,
our
to be
culture.
like
And
somewhere. Yeah.
Nicer did a UK. And I dug a
No,
pond.
that's what
I
made me
dug a
laugh.
pond and he put a river going down into the pond. And then I put pumps there. So if
That's
people go to my house and they see this, they don't have to get high, bro. They look at that, they say, oh
no,
shit.
they think the wall is bleeding water because it's
Yes.
you put
Yes.
all the pumps against the wall and we painted the wall. Yeah, I remember that. That
And
was
people come,
hilarious, dude.
people come. We have brought more people to the Bronx from around the world than Bronx tourism. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, we've had almost every country on earth has come to Mi Casa Tu Casa in the South Bronx. And
Yes, 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 yes.
everybody who sees that wall is like getting a piece of art, a piece of history, and a piece of the talent that exists in the South Bronx. So I'm so
No, no,
proud,
yeah.
and I want to thank you, Nicer,
No, thank
because
you.
that's the piece of that's like the calling card for our house.
Listen, next time I'm there, I need more pizza. And I gotta we probably gotta touch it up again.
Yes, you do. I gotta call you on that one.
Whenever you're ready. I
Yeah.
got you.
No. Thanks for sharing that, Julio. And here are some other murals that Tats Crew have done and that have attracted tourists to the neighborhood. But I wanted to ask you, Nicer, about the memorials that you've done in the past.
Oh yeah.
So how are these memorials done? Are these community members that you personally knew, or are they
No, no,
commissioned murals?
no, yeah. The way we started, like, all right, so remember graffiti is a subculture. So it's kind of like it's an underground world back in the days. It was like nobody knew each other. I could have a beef or sit next to a rival, a guy that was writing over my stuff next to me, and I even know that he was sitting next to me because there was no faces, there was no internet, there was no magazines, there was no shows. We didn't have programs like this. You didn't even know what the guy looked like. You only knew his work and what he was doing. So that being said, we then went from this underground world into an outside world. So when we started painting in the streets, we started to leave our cell phone numbers. No, wait, our beeper numbers. BG actually left his beeper number. So, um, so, sorry, I'm a beeper baby. That's how it started. So BG would leave his beeper number and we would sign it Tats Cru. I think back then we started with just Tat and then TAT Cru. And then but anyway, what ended up happening was we did one for a friend of ours. So Bob grew up in Bronx River. So in the handball court, illegal. I didn't say the word illegal. On the handball courts, we found a painting. It said R.I.P. Pollo. So Pollo was a guy that lived in Bob's building. So, if you Spanish, you know what pollo means. But the a lot of black people that lived in the building was like, what the hell is that? Polo. We're like, no, pollo. So he started, so then, but it was like because while we were painting something for ourselves, his brother that grew up with Bio came over crying to us saying, yo, my brother just passed. They just shot him in the polo grounds. Polo ground, look. So we were like, dang. So Bio goes, no, can we do something in the middle between our names? I was like, yeah, because I was going to do a character there. So I did a heart with a ribbon. It said R.I.P. Pollo. And then the day he was born, the day he died. That's how it started for us. Oh my God.
Wow.
From that day, that was like in 88, 89. All the way till now, we're still doing memorial walls. So the way it started was people would either call the beeper number or ask, how did you find these guys? I want to get one of these. And it became, because, all right, this is what the memorial walls mean in a lot of communities. They're an epitaph to the person who wasn't a basketball player, wasn't a football player, wasn't a famous person, wasn't an actor. They actually were real people within those neighborhoods.
Mhm.
So to have them memorized or immortalized on walls where, I mean, these walls become wailing walls for a lot of these communities. So whether you go to the walls, you cry, you light a candle, you talk to it, or you can be down the block and look over your shoulder and still see one of your loved ones over your shoulder and go, wow, I remember Papote. I remember, Jessica. I remember. And we've done memorial walls for the past. There's a book, if you guys want to look at it. The photographs were by Martha Cooper, and the text was written, which I took them around the entire city, all boroughs. Was Joe Sciorra, Annabella Sciorra's brother. He's actually like he's a writer, a folkloric professor. So that book is called R.I.P. New York City. We're highlighted, but it tells you the story and the timeline of. Remember, so Latinos, when someone died in your building, you would put out flowers, to let people know in the neighborhood, like someone passed away here. Prior to that, that's the New York City stuff. Prior to that, if you lived on the island, you lived in Puerto Rico, whatever island you was from, wherever you came from, prior to that, in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, in front of the roadside, you would have candles or you would have a marker like a cross with flowers. So the modern day version of that kind of memorializing, like to let people know, like, Titi Celia died, Titi, Carmen died, like that's how it kind of like originated. And it wasn't just a Spanish thing, it was all Caribbean, it was all so that kind of like culture and that mindset came to the United States, and the modern day version became these memorial walls, these
Yeah.
paintings on the walls. So we started with one, then we did three, then we did five. Listen, I've done. We always do them with legal permission. We always get the property owner's permission or the store. Somebody has to be accountable, not us.
Yeah.
So we
Elena,
paint them.
Elena said that she had a question about the memorials. Do you wanna ask
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
question,
Hi.
Elena?
Hi, Nicer. How are you doing?
Hey, hey, what up, boo?
So I just have a question. There's a great new documentary on Netflix that just came out about crack, the whole crack epidemic and that era. It's really well done by Emmy nominated director, which I can't remember right now. But I was thinking of you guys because didn't also the memorial wall sort of grew during the tradition of the memorial walls grew during the crack epidemic, right? Because so many people were losing lives in the drug and gang wars. And so that was was that like your busiest time in terms of making the RIP murals?
You know what? It's that's a good question because it actually correlated with the same time with there was always street violence in New York City. So having us paint these, look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat things. There were uh, um, fighting neighborhoods from all over, whether it was from the Bronx, because the Bronx had many that were fighting each other. It was ridiculous. It was like Fordham Road was fighting Watson, and Watson was fighting Southern Boulevard, and Southern Boulevard was, it was like it was ridiculous. But it was like, but we were always neutral because we were like, we just paint this. Like, I don't care. I'm not into none of that. But the crazy thing was, we did so many memorial walls at that era around that time. I remember going to a spot and hanging out for a minute. And while we're waiting for Bob to get back to the van, because we had a van, and I remember waiting for him to get back in the car. We run into some people that we know. They like the first words out their mouth was like, "What you guys doing here? Nobody got killed." And we were like, "What?" And but we were always butter jokes like that because we were jokers. Like, first of all, if you're from the Bronx, you snap. That's called snapping. You were like, get out of here. Your shoes are dirty. Like, get out of here with that shit. Like, it was funny. So, but when they started like kind of like saying that we heard things like, oh, when business is slow, do you guys hang out in emergency rooms?
Yeah.
Oh, do you guys hang out in front of Ortiz funeral home? But it was just the time, but it wasn't kind of like because of that. It was just a lot of it had to do with, I've done memorial walls for. There was a woman that she fell in an escalator in Kmart. I don't know if you guys remember this. She fell in Kmart on the escalator right there on White Plains Road and the Bruckner. She hit her head on the escalator. She went home. She refused to go to in the ambulance when they called the ambulance. She was embarrassed. She went home, told her daughter what happened, lay down on the sofa, hemorrhage. Her bread, her brain was cracked open because of the fucking escalator, and she fell asleep and never woke up again. We done memorial walls for a 3-year-old that was given wrong medication. There's so many, like the stories are so. I remember my partner BG telling me like one day he goes, "Yo, I don't want to do these no more. It's so sad." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's extra cash." He was like, "Yeah, it's just sad. It's like every time you painting, I give you, I'm painting on 116th Street and Lexington Avenue, right next to the train station. We're painting a memorial wall for this guy named, I didn't want to say his name. So we're painting the wall, and the guy from the grocery store comes out and he looks at what BG's painting. He goes, "Wow, it looks just like him." That bastard. And we looked at him. We're like, "What?" He was like, "Yeah, they wouldn't have killed him. I would have killed him. I hated him." And then he went back into the store. And I was like, and I looked at Bob. I was like, "We got to get out of here, dude. Like, let's get the hell out of here." But it's like every
Yeah.
every war has a story. It's like the same
Yeah.
way if I paint here in New York or I paint anywhere around the world, dogs, there's always the same makeup. Anywhere you go around, if I paint here in New York or LA, there's always the nosy vieja comes over and be like, "What are you doing? Who? I'm gonna call the police. Who got you to do this?" You always got the jokers on the block that they got nothing else to do. They just smoking weed. They come over. They try to snap on you. You snap on them back. You always got the. There's always a guy that's like he swears he's the security on the street. He's like, "Oh, what are you doing? Stop! You got a permit?" Like you got that guy.
Okay.
Every
Yeah.
neighborhood, whether you're in the hood or not, it's always the same people.
Yeah. Samuel Brooks, who is the co-chair of this group, he has to leave the meeting, but
Ah,
he wanted to say some words before leaving.
oh yeah, no doubt.
Sam, do you wanna open your
Yeah,
mic?
absolutely. A couple of friendly faces de Julio Pau, ¿cómo estamos?
Yo,
Julio,
Dios mío,
Julio
gracias.
the
Muy
man.
bien.
Julio's the
Nicer,
man.
nicer. Yeah, I wanted to obviously thank you on behalf of the Bronx Borough Landmarks Committee. When we talk about historic preservation, most people tend to think it's all about buildings, but actually, it's beyond that for our committee, right? It's the type of work that you've been doing in our communities since the 70s. Not just preservation of buildings, but it's preservation of culture, history, art, music, food. And this was really a very welcome addition to our conversation here on our monthly meeting. It's a very important thing because you guys are going down in history. I've been in the South Bronx since the early 70s, since 1974. And I never left. So I've seen your work. I've seen all of the graffiti artists' work over the decades, and it's something that is commendable in terms of you guys being able to start that era, but then your work has become something very respected. And I want to thank you for connecting with us and blessing us with some of your culture, some of your history, which is a very important part of our community. So with that, I wanted to thank you.
No,
Thank you,
thank you,
Sam.
thank you, thank
Thank
you,
you,
thank you
Sam.
very much, man.
And
Got a lot of love.
someone else was asking on the chat if you, Nicer, uh, had to decide which of the murals that you've done in the Bronx in the past, if you had to decide which of those murals had to be landmarked to become a landmark of the city, which one would you say? What's the most meaningful mural that you've done in the Bronx that you think represents the Bronx and
Oh,
Tats Cru and the culture? Is there any mural that comes to your mind, or do you feel that all of them are the same and they have the same meaning?
no, well, we've done work for. Listen, I've been pretty blessed where I've done work for everyone from like Ripley's, Ripley's, Believe It or Not, Twitter, Coca-Cola. Oh my God, the client list is so crazy. But to be honest, I always love painting home because I'm home. Um, I think, listen, I remember Simpson Street when it wasn't a dead end. So I would really think Simpson Street, the Bronx mural, is important to me because we did it without overthinking it. Like, you know, when you can overthink something, like it was kind of like more, oh, let's do this. And it was so organic. And it was like, if you know us, like Elena knows us, everybody that knows us out there, bless you, thank you guys. But in reality, like, we're not that serious. We're more charlatans. Like, we get there, we're like, let's do it. Like, what do you want? You want it here? You want it there? Like, it's not like that. Like, I don't show up with like 57 renderings, like architectural renderings with schematics. Like, we just go and we do it. Like, it's who we are. So I
Yeah,
think that Bronx mural, it's something because of where it's placed. Because my grandmother used to take me to the Vivero down the block. And around the corner from the double discount used to be a butcher shop. And it's like there's history there. You had the art theater, you had it's like that neighborhood means something. So to have that Bronx mural there, I don't know how the hell these people ended up deciding that that was going to be a spot for them to take tourists to. Listen, if I can make $1, I'll make it. But I swear to God, like I don't know how the hell that happened. But you know what? It's welcomed because if we could show people that you're not scared, and we do have beauty, and we have something. I mean, I understand a lot of people fighting that and going, no, you know, they should pay or they shouldn't come to our community. Listen, I've traveled around the world. I've been in neighborhoods where they go, don't go over there. And the first thing I do in the hotel, I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna go over there because I want to see what's over there. Because where the hell I've been in my life that's just gonna scare me. Like, what, you gonna take my fingers? Like, get out of here with that shit. Like, I'm gonna run.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So before we finish our meeting, because we're running out of time,
I can imagine, yeah.
yeah, I wanted to show this video of Tats Cru
Oh, wow.
and some collaboration that they
We did
did
that with the Bronx Zoo.
with the Bronx Zoo.
This thing that was just our borough thing is now a global thing. Basically, we came from the South Bronx here in New York City, and when we were painting on the subways in the 80s, and no one cared what was on the outside of these trains but us. We did it for each other's attention.
That's the corner, you're not gonna do my name.
This was an underground community. We didn't even know what each other's faces looked like. You were just the name that was on the side of the trains.
You know, I did BG183, nicer bio.
Preserve and protect all species. Winners of hip-hop.
Graffiti spoke to a generation, and it gave a voice to those that didn't have a voice.
Animals are like people too.
The Bronx is known for, like, you know, the DJing, the MCing.
Everything started in the Bronx. You know, you had the beatbox, you had the breakers.
So we proudly represent the Bronx wherever we go. We're not shy about it. The Bronx has a few things that all the other boroughs don't have, like the Bronx Zoo. The Bronx got it going on.
Without even trying, all the birds that be flying, and the ones in the trees, animals and MCs.
It's an honor to have the Bronx Zoo reaching out to Bronx artists.
You know, the Bronx Zoo should reflect the culture here. Growing up in the Bronx and now as adults being able to collaborate and do a project together with the Bronx Zoo. We're pretty excited.
Lions, tigers, bears, giraffes, elephants, owls, eagles.
Graffiti in itself is a collaborative art form because, you know, you had one guy doing lettering, got other guys working on the background.
So he'll start first, and I'll jump in second, BJ will finish up, and it's like, we know what we're there to do.
I'll offer her 2 different colored paint bottles, hold it up, and then she can choose.
Working with the animals, they went first. And being that there's no verbal interaction, it's just whatever visually they gave you. So it's like the battle in the Bronx. So that's what we do.
Lions, tigers, bears, giraffes, elephants, owls, eagles, bullets.
We didn't wrap the artwork right away. It was just like, you know, little patches of color here like that. And I already had an idea. It just came to me like, all right, I'll do this one. I got this one.
My theme is DJing. When I first saw it and I saw what was going on with the colors, my brain just started going like...
Winners of hip-hop, eyes of the element, reading is relevant, don't stop. Come on.
Try to relate what the Bronx represent and what the art represents. So I took both ideas and I just made it into one. I think that was the best thing.
It was interesting today to actually see the otters. We saw their paintings first. It's kind of cool to meet the artist, so to speak, you know?
You can see they were like a family. So it reminded me like people like that live in the Bronx, they're family. Watching the otter like swing together like a one movement, that was like really great.
Hip-hop, eyes of the element, reading is relevant.
I'm excited to like take on this whole project and see where it goes from here.
It's the merging of two worlds, you know? The outside culture meets the inside culture of the zoo.
Or the inside
Meets the outside.
We got a whole lot more than just elephant.
Graffiti artists meet animal.
All right.
Right, that was
so
cool. I haven't seen that in a long time.
that was really cool. I wanted to show.
Yeah, that
it.
was cool.
No,
it was like, it was an honor to be. First of all, growing up in the Bronx, people only come from Manhattan to either go to the Botanical Garden or Bronx Zoo or Yankee Stadium.
Diego, Bobby has a question for Nicer, actually.
Bobby, what's up, man?
Yo, what's happening? Hey, Julio, how are you, man?
I'm doing fine, man. Nice to see you guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Listen, is there any chance the Otters might get offered a position at Tats Cru? An entry-level position? You know?
They're interning right now. Right now, I got them in the office. They're cleaning. Because of COVID, I got them cleaning and wiping everything down. No, it was a weird event because they wanted to highlight the Bronx in the Bronx Zoo, but the Bronx Zoo's been there so long. It's like the first time they were like, you realize there's people outside the gate that live outside the gate. So it's like you're bringing the animals inside. It's like, so what we're gonna do to animals inside? So really quick. I got an email one day before that project came to fruition. I got an email. It was like, yeah, we want you guys to paint with animals. We're like, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, a bird or something. I don't know what the hell that shit means. I'm like, yeah, no problem. So when they said gorilla, I was like, gorilla? Like, I ain't going in the cage with a gorilla. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, I'm like, nah. I'm like, no. And then the funny thing is, then I got an email like, so I was given the gorilla, BG was given the otters, and Bio was given, I forgot, it was a bird. It was anyway, so we each got an animal. So we each got a theme. So it was about hip hop. So ourselves, me, Bio, BG, Crash, Andre Trenner was involved in the project. So we all had a hip hop theme. So my theme was DJing. So when they gave the gorilla a canvas and they gave him paint and he went. Then they gave me the canvas. I was like, thank God the gorilla's not here delivering this shit. So I looked at it. I was like, okay. And I did a DJ. Like, actually, we bought back from them the majority of what they didn't sell because of the pandemic. There was a lot of, they were going through like such a null, and people, remember, they shut everything down. So, but if anybody's interested, we have a lot of those prints. So I ended up just buying, you know, it's just helping because if you keep an institution like that I'm from the Bronx, and you know what? My mother was a working. I learned English in first grade reading at. My mother was behind me going at. So I was the firstborn in the United States. So she didn't know how to speak English. So as I learned English, she learned English too. So it was like double teaching. So, but being that we were here on Southern Boulevard, we never really went to the zoo. I didn't take advantage of it because we're not from that tourism. We're from living it. So to be invited there, it's one of my moments. That's definitely a moment. Like when I was invited to paint something for the Smithsonian Institute. Like Elena, you was a big part of that. Like you know, I was joking with the guy when he said, "What do you want to paint on?" I said, "Yeah, we paint on buildings." And the next few days, I got a PDF of a building layout that they built us, a fake building, right? It was a fake building, and they built it on the lawn. I was like, "Get the hell out of here!" I was joking with him. What if I? Remember the people from the MTA?
The best part, yeah, they put the train right next to you guys. They put the MTA.
They were like, they made a special meeting. They were like, guys, whatever you do, the MTA doesn't want you guys to touch the train. It was weird. It was.
They guarded it at night.
Yeah, no, we represent.
You guys were probably chomping at the bit to hit that bomb that train, man.
No.
Memories.
We were enjoying. What was it? Yorktown. What was it? Georgetown. No, we had a good time. That was a great trip, man.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Nicer, for sharing all those experiences, and thank you so much for joining us tonight and
yes,
to talk about all the wonderful work that you've done in the Bronx. And thank you, everybody who joined this meeting. It was a pleasure to see you all and to hear Nicer. And I'll be sending the recording video of this meeting, and please join our future meetings, and I'll follow up with Nicer and everyone else about this event. But thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon.
It's been a pleasure. Good night, everybody. Nice. It was nice seeing you.
Yes, always good
seeing you. It's been a pleasure seeing you, even if it's a video.
You guys got the number. You guys got the number. Just use it. You know where it is.